Upon hearing mixed reviews for the live-action remake of Disney's Aladdin, I decided I'd come on down, stop on by, hop a carpet and fly to another Arabian night. Oh, I'm not gonna sing. Basically, I watched the film. Before I discuss that, however, I realised this was a perfect opportunity to analyse the original 1992 classic in slightly more depth than I previously have. It's a brilliantly paced adventure, filled with investing romance, compelling character arcs, a creatively weaponised traditional fantasy setting, a genuine sense of camaraderie between lead roles, and an invested, perfectly chosen voice cast. Special mention in this department goes to the Genie, played by the late Robin Williams, Iago, voiced by the early Gilbert Gottfried, who actually seems to be more cartoonish than his character, and the villainous Jafar, played by Jonathan Freeman. Although, after he was trapped in a lamp and sent to the Cave of Wonders, he should probably be called Jonathan Imprisoned Man. Gilbert, on the other hand, was not trapped for very long. That's because Gilbert got freed. A feature of this film I massively appreciate is how well defined every character seems to be. With the leads it's necessary, but even the palace guards and a magic carpet are given a sense of personality. I've seen live-action Disney characters who are less expressive than that faceless, voiceless piece of furniture. I'm talking about the carpet again, by the way, not Emma Watson. This sense of character is helped by the rich and semi-experimental art style, which allows the opportunity for slightly exaggerated designs. The songs are dedicatedly written and performed. I've really started to appreciate the thoughtfulness of the lyrics. I never used to notice, but they're actually intellectually chosen with a poetic quality to them. Like in Prince Ali when they use terms like salam, bazaar, coterie, menagerie, Tomangerie. They don't use that last one. It's also a brilliantly affectionate, respectful parody of the Arabian Nights fairy tale, giving a more organised story and logical important morals to Aladdin's tale while equipping a brilliantly welcome sense of humour. Even though Robin Williams' lines are the most memorable, there are some brilliantly fleeting moments of comedy genius elsewhere, like the "You idiots, we've all got swords" moment in One Jump Ahead, Abu and the Magic Carpet's reactions to Aladdin's actions throughout, Iago dancing to Prince Ali's song before Jafar catches him. Actually, speaking of Prince Ali, there's one bit where you see an inflatable gorilla and one of the people holding onto it is actually floating away. I did not notice that for ages. Subtleties of this nature make the world feel more intimate. In a previous video I criticised some of the character designs, but now every area of the art style feels essential to the film's identity for me. I also criticised the fact that Aladdin chastises Jafar for lying to the Sultan while himself posing as a prince, so also lying to the Sultan, hypocrite. But my views on this plot point have changed since then too. Firstly, Aladdin has become a prince by now thanks to magic, and secondly, since his roots being revealed are a major part of the story, his mild deceit of the princess is intentional characterisation anyway. These two criticisms were only ever mentioned in the original video because I felt like some negativity was needed. In an otherwise rightly praise-laden analysis. I do, however, have some genuine misgivings with the film. Jasmine is slightly lacking in agency and Jafar is slightly lacking in motivation. A backstory for the latter, however fleeting, would have really complemented his sinister humour and infectious melodrama. I was also deeply disappointed when I realised that the writers originally intended to reveal that the street vendor at the beginning was actually the genie in disguise, explaining his red and blue attire, four-fingered hands, facial hair, and Robin Williams' voice. But assuming I was never made aware of these intentions, I'd never have been disappointed by their absence. A similar statement can be made of the scene where Jasmine's trapped in an hourglass. Originally she was meant to free herself, but in the finalised film Aladdin frees her. Apparently it was altered due to an animation error, but seeing this level of capability from the female love interest would have been seriously satisfying. Maybe before smashing the hourglass she'd have to smash the glass ceiling. Oh, satire. These minor issues may have been given the opportunity for redemption upon the arrival of a live-action remake. Oh, look at that transition. I'll be discussing in detail, and even though the plot is familiar to most, I'll put a light spoiler warning, for the benefit of anyone intent on seeing the film with zero frame of reference to any of the changes made. Firstly, the visuals were a genuine high point. Carefully designed costumes, a bright and vivid colour palette, enjoyable animal effects, and appropriately, a Bollywood film style aesthetic. The Arabian Nights opening of the original film is a scene I really love. And while the live action's rendition doesn't surpass it, mainly because the original is obviously more original, while the animated film pans across a cityscape, showing basically irrelevant people and events, the remake showcases the main characters performing relevant actions in the space of one long atmospheric shot. It is genuinely astounding. Visuals were a particularly pleasant surprise since a lot of the trailers looked amateur. They boasted distracting CGI that in the film's context is barely problematic. Said CGI, which is of course known to stand for computerized Genie, is it? Barely hampered my immersion. The unrealistic style almost suits the outlandishness of the character and is graciously sparingly used. I would have ultimately preferred Genie to look human and just to shapeshift when needs must. But were they to do this, there'd be complaints about how Genie didn't resemble his cartoon counterpart enough. There were similar indecisive complaints about the Beauty and the Beast remake. The general consensus was, I hate that they kept everything the same. I also don't like how they made so many changes. What could you possibly want? This brings me to an unsurprising highlight. The Genie himself. Will Smith wisely avoids imitation of the late Robin Williams' performance. It's relieving that Disney didn't just cast another live-action cartoon character who loudly jumps through impressions like Jim Carrey, for example. Smith brings an individual level of vibrancy and theatrics, and he's actually given more opportunity to display subtlety and heart than Williams' character ever was. In the beginning, he's asked to tell a story in song form, a missed opportunity for him to say, "Now this is a story all about how." While he's not more entertaining, he does feel like a more established character, with a satisfying arc. Speaking of characterization, there are subtle changes elsewhere. Jasmine's given a stronger character, and Jafar is given a backstory that creates a parallel between him and Aladdin. But this is underused and he loses all his sense of humour in the transition to live action. So does Iago. The writers might have felt like rationing the amount of comical characters for this new medium was necessary, but providing both the characters with subdued sarcasm would have been suitable. The Sultan also suffers slightly from the transition. Like Iago and Jafar, he loses all sense of humour. But he is more assertive than his animated counterpart, so there is some kind of positive characterization remaining. There's a welcome cast addition in the form of a handmaiden, and ultimately all the actors, especially our three leads, are suited to their roles, apart from Jafar, who's quite bland. The music is well produced, making respectful alterations to the original songs, and in general the film almost matches the energy and joy of the 1992 film. Though there was one song addition that, while well performed by Naomi Scott, felt padded and slightly melodramatic and marked one of the only times in the film when my immersion noticeably wavered, apart from where Jafar was involved, who's quite bland. I will not deny the film is basically unnecessary, but I think this has to be forgiven of almost any new remake. Focusing on the lack of necessity can lead to failing to notice the obvious positives in a film. It is in no way superior to the original film, but it's energetic, funny and spectacular when judged on individual merit. The only glaring issues for me was the one additional scene I referenced earlier, Jafar's under-characterization, because he's quite bland, and occasional issues with pacing. I also think more bold alterations of the story would have been beneficial, but this shouldn't be problematic, providing one is able to wisely divorce themselves from the original film, he says in a video called Aladdin Vs Aladdin. While the original animated film is worthy of a 9 out of 10, the remake is worthy of a 7. Out of 100? No, still out of 10. Thanks for watching this video broadly discussing Disney's stream of live-action remakes. Now I've mentioned that trend, we've all reached the end of another Arabian Night. Arabian Nights like Arabian days, more often than not are hotter than hot in a lot of good ways. Arabian Nights neath Arabian moons, a fool of his God could fall and fall hard out there on the dunes.